Hello traders, welcome to the Nexoel Trading Hub YouTube channel. So we're going to be looking at the weekly forecast for the coming week, and we are starting off from the dollar index. This is the dollar index and this is the weekly time frame. So what we can see is the expectation we had to see how price was going to seek the buy side liquidity. We saw the reaction of price from the monthly bullish zone, and within the monthly bullish zone we had a weekly bullish fair value gap. So sell side liquidity was taken. We expected to see how price was going to trade bullish to seek the buy side. And we pointed the fact that if we're going to have more bullish continuation, then we want to see price trade into the monthly bearish breakout level. And if price going to sustain that bullishness, then it would mean the violation of this weekly rejection block, which is in confluence to the monthly bearish breakout block. And then we may see then price trade to the next draw on liquidity, which is the monthly bearish fair value gap. So far what we can see is 2 weeks ago, we had the movement of price to the upside seeking the buy side liquidity. And then we had bearish close of price to the downside. The volume or price delivery took out the previous weekly candle high, and then volume closed below that. So we identified the weekly bullish fair value gap here in the weekly time frame. And I pointed towards the possibility to expect to see how price dips into the weekly bullish fair value gap, and in confluence we have this bullish block, which is the weekly bullish order block, because here we have a sell movement before the buy movement that sponsored the movement of price that seek the buy side liquidity. So last week, if you can remember, I told us we could expect to see price trade into the fair value gap, and price may dip more lower, and then we have the possibility of now framing bullish continuation. So whatsoever then would give us a perspective to frame a long-term bearish possibility is when then we see that price trades and violates the bullish zone, then we may begin to expect to see more lower prices in the dollar index. But so far then we have a bullish reference point, which is this weekly bullish block. So we still have that perspective to look at bullish possibility from lower time frame. Clearly, what do I mean? The possibility to see if price in lower time frame is going to frame and gives us a bullish model with a possibility to continue bullish to the upside. So our reference point now is the weekly bullish order block we have here. It is a violation of this that would give us a long time bearish possibility. So we have price now closed within the weekly bullish fair value gap. So this is last week delivery, and we can see that price closed within the weekly bullish fair value gap. So let's look at the daily time frame to look at the possible roadblocks that may support our buyers and the roadblocks that may oppose our buyers or perspective for the coming week. So here in the daily time frame, what we can clearly see is price took out this high. We had the sell movement, which is the weekly bullish order block from the weekly time frame. Here you have that as an institutional order flow, because you have series of bearish candles before we had the bullish movement that took out this high point. So this is a weekly bullish fair value gap, and price reacted from that, closed within that. Friday gave us an indecision candle here. So we can see that this level have not been mitigated, which is the volume, the open price of the sell candle from the weekly time frame, which frame for us the bullish candle. So what we are going to be looking for to see is how Monday delivers. If Monday gives us a bullish momentum from the fair value gap, then we can begin to look at bullish possibility. And we want to trade bullish first to this daily bearish fair value gap. Why? Because we may see bearish reaction to the downside, and we do not know if that will just give us a short-term bearish movement to continue bullish, or we may see a bearish narrative that may just continue bearish to the downside. Hence why I always recommend you trade from a specific zone to the next possible zone, which may oppose your long-term movements. So the violation of this then helps you to understand that you can now begin to expect bullish momentum to the monthly bearish breakout level, which is in confluence with the weekly rejection block. So this is the possibility we'll be looking forward to see in the coming week in the dollar index, except then possibly we see price trades lower and gives us the model from the weekly bullish order block to trade bullish to the upside. So it means that for a bearish possibility, then we want to see strong bearish volume that violates the weekly zone, and then we can begin to look at bearish possibility to the downside. So this is what I have to show us in the dollar index here in the daily time frame. Let's look at the 4-hour time frame in the dollar index. So what we can see here in the 4-hour time frame is this. Last week I pointed towards we have the sell movement before this bullish impulse that took out these high points, and in confluence, that is where the low of the weekly bullish fair value gap is resting. And we can see here we have the sell candle before the buy impulse. So we can see price traded into that, and we start seeing bullish reaction. Though the bullish reaction is still within the weekly bullish fair value gap. So here's the weekly bullish order block level. So what we can see is within the fair value gap, we have a bull movement. Price created this sell movement before a bullish movement into this fair value gap. And what we can now see is that price traded to the downside, but strong bullish rejection. So we may see price hold from this sponsorship block. Basically, we have to look at lower time frame like the 15-minute time frame. If we see price giving us bullish possibility, then we may see price just continue bullish to the upside. And if price violates this fair value gap, then we can begin to look at price seeking this buy side liquidity, pool of buy side liquidity resting here, and we have bullish continuation into the daily bearish fair value gap. So you guys know last week I told us that if price doesn't trade to the daily bearish fair value gap, for us to have the bearish possibility to the downside, price may react from that of the 4-hour, which we can see clearly. Price reacted from that of the 4-hour and then traded bearish to the downside. So this is the bullish possibility. It is either it holds from here, or then we find the possibility that price drops into the weekly bullish zone to take out last week low and then gives us the bullish model. So just the way I showed you guys from the weekly time frame and also the daily time frame, a strong violation of this by volume then will determine bearish possibility. So this is what I have to show you guys in the dollar index. So let's look at the EURUSD pair, guys. Here in EURUSD, if you can vividly recall, last week I told us to expect to see how price was going to trade higher to seek this buy side liquidity, and then we could look at the possibility that we're going to have a bearish close of the week. But what we can see is that in the EURUSD, we have more bullish momentum reacting at the zone we identified from last week forecast. Because last week we saw the sweep of the sell side, volume closed above with bullish possibility. So that was why I also pointed towards to expect to see that we may have that bullish movement to seek the previous weekly high points, and then we may have a bearish close of the week. But anyway, the week still closed somehow bullish, reacting from the zone. So what we can see is the bearishness to the downside, seek the buy side. Unlike the dollar index that actually seeked the buy side liquidity after seeking the sell side. Here we have EURUSD seek the buy side but did not seek the sell side liquidity. So from the EURUSD, this is quite trickish. So we may see price holds from here and then gives us the bearish possibility to the downside, or we may now see that this really is going to continue bullish. But for it to continue bullish, we may see price then dip to the downside, and then before we have that bullish possibility to seek this high here as liquidity, and also possibly this high also as liquidity. So this is quite tricky. So we have to really be open-minded to what we are going to see in the pairs when the market opens. But since I'm expecting more of a bullish side, then EURUSD then means we'll be looking to a bearish side. But then we have to look at the lower time frame. What is the narrative also in the lower time frame in confluence to these levels or zones identified from the higher time frame here, which is now the weekly time frame? So let's get to the daily time frame to look at possible roadblocks. So let's check the daily time frame in the EURUSD. So what we can see here in the EURUSD from the daily time frame is this. So this is the weekly level where price currently is at, and we can clearly see that when price came into this rejection level here in the daily time frame, Friday gave us a sell movement, and this was something I looked into with one of the traders in the private community. So he sent me a DM for clarity purposes. So we had a conversation in regards to that, why I was looking to bearish possibility in Euro USD on Friday. Because it was Friday, I saw bullish movement since this was reacting at a rejection level, and Thursday volume closed below that level. So I expected to see that Friday was going to give us that bearish possibility to the downside. So what we can see here from the daily time frame is this: we have bullish momentum. Here you can see this fair value gap. Price did not return to that. Price just continued bullish. So here we have a daily bullish fair value gap. Hence why I told us from the weekly perspective that we may see price then return to this fair value gap to continue bullish, to seek this liquidity resting here into this rejection block level. And then from the rejection block level, we may now see the possibility that price is going to give us a bearish model to trade bearish then to the downside. So for the bullish perspective, we want to trade bullish to see how price comes into this rejection block. Reaction from the rejection block will help us determine the perspective if price is going to then possibly be strongly bullish, or price may react here and give us a bearish model to trade bearish to the downside. So here is a liquidity resting here, a buy side liquidity, which price may seek. So I'm looking at the possibility that price may seek this liquidity into this rejection block before we have the possibility of a bearish perspective. So we may see price then return to this daily bullish fair value gap, taking out Friday's low, and then we have bullish possibility. But then if this happens, then where price strongly violates that, we may see that act as an inversion fair value gap to give us bearishness to the downside into this unmitigated fair value gap resting here before we start targeting the lows. So this is what I have to show us in the Euro USD from the daily time frame. Let's look at the 4-hour time frame here in the Euro USD pair. In the 4-hour time frame, what we can see now is this. This is the high identified from the daily as the drawn liquidity. We're looking forward to see the possibility that price may seek that, or price may not seek that, because we know that this reaction is from a daily rejection level. So what we can see is the rejection block level we marked at the high of this, above this high, is the fair value gap here in 4-hour time frame. We'll have a bearish fair value gap. So it means if price is going to seek this liquidity, there is a valid reason for it to seek it to the upside into this fair value gap resting here, which is in confluence with the rejection block level we marked from the daily time frame. So, and what we can see is bullish structure to the upside thus far. But you know, the overall direction we're seeing is that price is giving us bearishness. So in Euro USD, this is what I'll be looking forward to see. Since this is a reaction from a daily level, and we're seeing how price just traded more bearish. So I'll be trading bearish then, and then looking at how price reacts here, because price may give us a bullish model. So it means if that bullish model is printed here, then it means price is aiming possibly to seek that buy side liquidity. So the rejection block would be the target. In confluence, we have a bearish fair value gap, because from here then we may see price drops, giving us a bearish model to want to give us bearish movements to the downside. But then what we have to look at here is this: if this doesn't hold price in confluence to the bullish fair value gap, we have this delivery, then we know then price wants to target the sell side, sell side, sell side. You know, we have the daily bullish fair value gap here. Then we can begin to look at this possibility in the Euro USD. So this is what I have to show us in Euro USD, guys. Let's check out the GBPUSD pair. Yeah, in GBPUSD, if you guys can recall last week, I told us to expect to see price trade bullish into the fair value gap zone. And within the weekly fair value gap zone, in the daily time frame, we also have a daily bearish fair value gap zone as a reference point to anticipate to see the possibility that sell model may be created from there for us to have sell possibility after the bullish delivery. Because last week we saw how price took out sell side liquidity here, give us bullish rejection. Hence why I anticipated to see how price was going to trade more bullish into the fair value gap zone as the next draw on liquidity. So let's look at the daily time frame. But before we go to the daily time frame, here in the weekly time frame, we're still expecting a possibility that we may still see bullish movement of price to the upside before we start considering the possibility that price may give us bearishness. So we may see price still seek this previous weekly high because we have the daily bearish fair value gap zone within the weekly bearish fair value gap zone unmitigated. So let's check the daily time frame to verify this. So what we can see in the daily time frame is this. So you can see, last week I gave us two perspectives. I said it is either we see price continues bullish or we may see price return to the downside into this daily bullish fair value gap before we have the bullish movement into the weekly fair value gap zone, in which we have the daily bearish fair value gap zone within the weekly. So this is the daily bearish fair value gap zone. So what we can see is a bullish engulfing candle, a bullish rejection here. So we have that possibility that price may trade higher. So we're going to be looking at this. If price trades higher into this, then we may look at the possibility that price may give us a bearish model to continue bearish to the downside. If that model isn't presented within this zone in confluence to this daily zone within the weekly, then we could see price trade more higher into this fair value gap resting here. So this is a narrative in GBPUSD from the daily time frame. Let's look at the 4-hour time frame here in GBPUSD. So what we can see in the 4-hour time frame in GBPUSD is how price returned to the downside, seeked this low, mitigating the daily bullish fair value gap, and then give bullish movement. So we have a break of this high. So you can see within the weekly zone, here is the daily bearish fair value gap. And within the daily bearish fair value gap, here in the 4-hour time frame, which is also within the weekly zone, we have this rejection block. So that is another reference point here. So I'll be looking at this possibility to see how this may continue bullish. If price prints for us a bearish model from this, then we want to trade bearish to the downside. But if we see price just violate this by giving us this delivery to the upside, let's look at that. We have this. So we may see price then trade next into this. And then we have to then determine to see what happens here. If price is going to be bearish from that, or price may violate that, and then we start having bullish possibility. So for that to really happen, then it would mean that our dollar index bullish perspective then would be violated, and then we start having bearish perspective in the dollar index. So this is the worst case scenario I'll be expecting to see in GBPUSD. Let's check the 1 hour because we may see another block within this rejection block. So let's get to the 1 hour time frame. So here in the 1 hour time frame, awesome. So here we have that. We have a bearish order block. So this is a reference point to keep an eye on. So we may see price trades into that and then gives us a sell model to trade lower. So the violation of that then will mean the fair value gap above, which we saw in the daily time frame. So this is what I have to show us in GBPUSD. Let's check the next pair, guys. Yen basket, what we can see is the bearish order flow. Price have been trading bearish as expected in the yen basket, and we expected to see how price was going to trade further bearish last week because we have this unmitigated level. So what we can see is that this seeked this buy side liquidity. We had bearish rejection to the downside. So I told us to expect more bearish movement because we expect to see price trade into this level. Now we have an engulfing candle, a bearish order block here from the weekly time frame in the yen baskets. So we may expect to see this possibility that price may give us a bullish reaction, and then we find our bearish continuation to the downside. So following the order flow in yen basket, we are seeing more bearish possibility than bullish narrative because this seek this buy side, and then we have bearish continuation to the downside, giving us a bearish engulfing candle, which may serve now as a bearish order block from the weekly time frame to give us a bearish continuation further to the downside. So it is the violation of this that would now begin to lead to bullish movement to the upside. Let's look at the daily time frame. Here in the daily time frame, what we can clearly see is this. From the weekly as identified, we saw buy side taken, And then, last week I told us to see how price was going to go bearish on Monday. We expect a pullback then to continue bearish to seek this low before we start targeting the level we are looking forward to. Because I told us price may violate this fair value gap. So what we can see now is a violation of that strong impulse. Price has created a bearish fair value gap here. So we can see price return. This is where we have now price created that bearish engulfing. So Friday traded to the upside and then bearish rejection. So it is either we see bearish continuation to the downside in the yen basket, or then price trades to the upside to seek Friday's high. Then we have to look at the model that will be created from this fair value gap to help us determine the possibility of bearishness, or price then begins to trade higher. But in the yen basket, we're still looking more to bearish perspective and not really bullish. So we really have a valid reason to consider bullishness. Let's check the 4-hour time frame here in the yen basket. So here in the 4-hour time frame, what we can see is this. Last week, I told us how price respected this level when bearish. I told us if price violate this, expect a pullback. So we can see how that pullback came, mitigated the tip, and then we had the bearish continuation seeking this low. So price have returned now into the level mark from the weekly. So this is what we are seeing here. The candles here are not really so clear. So that was why I said also from the daily time frame, since we saw bearish rejection, it is either price continues bearish to the downside, or we may see price react then from this sell movement before this buy movement. This may hold price this level, and then we may see price seek Friday's high and then into the fair value gap, with a possibility that we may find sell model to the bearish side. So this is what I'll be looking forward to see in yen basket, which would help frame the perspective in pairs like the GBPUSD. Since we've looked at the dollar index, we can still want to use the yen basket also to find more perspective to USDJPY. So this is all I have to show us in yen basket. From the weekly time frame here in GBPJPY, what we can see is, I told us for our bullish perspective, we want to see price hold from this weekly bullish block, and then we continue bullish. I told us I wanted to see how price was going to trade bearish to seek the sell side, and then we have the bullish possibility aiming for buy side resting here, and we can see that delivery thus far. Now what we have is this bullish engulfing candle. So if we're going to have a bearish possibility to the downside, I don't want to see price violate this. So price may not really mitigate the volume, but we may see a bearish reaction to then continue bullish. This is the perspective I'm holding on in the GBPJPY pair, except proven otherwise. So let's look at the daily time frame here in GBPJPY. So what we can see here in the daily time frame is this. So reaction from the weekly bullish order block we just saw now from the weekly time frame, and from the 4-hour and daily time frame here, we identified this fair value gap. I wanted to see further bearishness before we have bullishness, and then we had this breakout block. So we had the sell movement before the buy movement that took out this high, this seek sell side, seek this sell side. So I told us to anticipate reaction within this zone to have that bullish movement. That was 2 weeks ago, and then we can see that bullish delivery. So last week I told us to anticipate more bullish movement to seek buy side, and then in extension we have this before we start targeting this. So what we can see, price gave us that bullish movement to the upside, though I expected to see that price may trade lower before we have that bullish continuation. But anyway, when the market opened, GBPJPY just continued bullish. So thus far now, this is the level we marked from the weekly time frame. So what I'll be looking forward to see is, since then we have bullish rejection by price then respecting the sell candle before this buy movement. So we may see buy continuation to the upside to seek the buy side, this other buy side. So this is the perspective that I'm pointing out to us. We have reaction from this and then buy rejection. So it is either price maybe continue bullish to the upside, or we then see price returning to the downside, and the reference point will be this fair value gap here within the weekly zone to see if price gives us a buy model to continue bullish. So this is my narrative and perspective in GBP JPY pair, guys. So from the daily time frame. So let's look at the 4-hour time frame here in GBP JPY to look at clarity to that. So here in the 4-hour time frame, not to take much of the time. So what we can see is the weekly level we marked, the weekly bullish order block, most recent one. So we can see how price here from the 4-hour is returning, reacting from that. Price again, return, reacts at that. So the fair value gap from the daily time frame. So it means that if we do not have bullish continuation and price decides to dip lower, then we want to see how price trades violating this level, pull back, and then we trade into the fair value gap. Because now here we have a rally, a base, a rally, then we may see how price may give us a buy model here to give us the possibility to continue bullish to the upside. This is not a class session, so I'm not really trying to break a lot of things down here. We're having a focus. So guys, this is the expectation in GBPJPY for the coming week. So let's look at USDJPY pair, guys. Here in USDJPY from the weekly time frame, our bullish perspective have been respected thus far. You know, start framing the bullish perspective, I think, from this candle. And while we interpreted this movement and the range, you know, we had that range. So we had the interpretation. So start expecting to see more higher prices. So what we can now see thus far is that last week gave us a bullish movement to the upside. Here we have a sell movement before the buy movement to the upside. So what we're going to be looking at then is to look at this possibility that we may have a bear pullback for a bullish continuation. So whatsoever violates this zone, then it means we may start seeing bearishness first to this level and then to this block, and then possibly start framing more downward movements. But then we have to look at if a bearish movement comes to the downside, this is a reference point to look at. If price doesn't violate that and prints a bullish model in the lower time frame, then we continue bullish in USD JPY. So that is the narrative from the weekly time frame. Let's look at the daily time frame here in the USD JPY pair. So what we can see here from the daily time frame is this. This is our level mark from the weekly. And what we can see down here in the daily time frame is this. Price traded into this bullish fair value gap, bullish rejection to the upside. So it is either we see this narrative happens in the markets that price may continue bullish to the upside, or we may see price trades lower back into this weekly level in confluence to this high that was violated, and then we see price possibly gives us a buy model to continue bullish to the upside. So this is the perspective here from the daily time frame. So I'll be looking at this possibility for a bullish narrative. Since here we can see that price reacted from the bullish fair value gap here, and then we had bullish rejection to the upside. You know, last week I told us 2 weeks ago, we expected this pullback to this level for the bullish possibility. Now we can see here price traded to a fair value gap and then bullishness. But then whatsoever then gives us a strong bearish narrative, then we may start seeing price trades back into this level. So this is what I'll be looking forward to in USD JPY. Let's check the 4-hour time frame for clarity's sake to look at possible zones then in reference to the higher time frames. So what we can see here in 4-hour time frame is this. We can clearly see the bullish fair value gap we identified from the daily time frame. Sweep of sell side, price traded higher. What we can see here is that we have this opposing bearish block that price has been failing to break above multiple retests. So if that gets violated by a bullish continuation, then we expect a pullback to want to continue bullish. For the bear possibility, we have to look at if price keeps holding from this block and then prints for us a reason to go bearish, then we may see price drop into this sell movement that wasn't mitigated. And if price gives us a buy model, then we may look forward to see buy continuation. or else if price violates this, then we are so bearish looking at this level then. So this is what I have to show us in USDJPY pair, guys. Here in US oil, what we can see is our bearish order flow that we've been looking at. So here we can see price failed to take out the sell side. Price returned back into this weekly bearish block. And what we can see is that price gave us bearish movements. But now price is facing rejection or support from this bullish engulfing candle. So this is quite trickish because we have an opposing bearish block, and now here we're seeing price reacting at the bullish block, and price gave us indecision candle. Though what we can see is the order flow is bearish, so we're looking at the bearish possibility that price may continue bearish to the downside. To seek the sell side here, in extension we have the sell side resting here. So let's look at the daily time frame here in US oil. So what we can see here from the daily time frame is this, the order flow from weekly bearish, the daily, we're looking at the bearish order flow also. So what we can see here in the daily time frame is this. I told us that we had price reacting at this level, which may give us that bearish movement into this bullish fair value gap. So this was the target I told us to target, not the low, because price may react from the bullish to give us a bullish reaction, and we do not know how the bullish reaction might be. It might be sustainable to the upside because of this buy side resting here and the fair value gap here. But anyway, price went bullish and then went bearish, strong bearish impulse to the downside. So what we can see here, we have an engulfing candle, a bearish order block, and now price reacted from that on Friday. Price is reacting from this bearish and also reaction from the daily bullish fair value gap. So you see why I said this is trickish. So since the order flow is bearish, then let's stick to the bearish perspective. If then we see Monday gives us a delivery bearish, then we can determine to see that price would continue bearish to the downside. But if Monday continues bullish and volume violates this bullish block, then we can see price aim for this liquidity into the fair value gap. So this will be our first target, and wait to see if price is going to print a bearish model for a bearish possibility then to the downside. So this is what I have to show us in the US oil from the daily time frame. Let's look at the 4-hour time frame here in the US oil. So here in the 4-hour time frame, what we can see from the 4-hour is this. We looked at all of this where I told us to expect a pullback here, take a sell to the fair value gap, because reaction here might go bullish to seek this. But then anyway, price return and then bearish momentum to the downside, taking out this low. Price have returned into this fair value gap, sharp rejection, but then price return to the bullish fair value gap, bullish reaction. This is trickish. Sticking to the order flow then, for a bearish possibility then, let's see how price trades lower. If this fair value gap here, the leftover fair value gap here, doesn't give a bullish push of price to the upside, then we would anticipate price to just trade lower. Strong volume violating this will just help us to build the perspective that price will continue lower to the downside. But then you have to look at this. If volume possibly trades lower and then seek this sell side liquidity and we have rejection from this fair value gap, then we may look at this possibility that price may trade bullish to the upside. But if we see volume really violate this fair value gap, then we would want to trade lower, aiming for the sell side liquidity, which is in confluence to the higher time frame order flow, which is bearish. So this is what I have to show us in the US oil, guys. Let's look at the next pair for the coming week. Yen gold, from the weekly time frame, what we can see is how price respected the weekly bullish fair value gap here. So the flow in gold is bullish. Gold has been extremely bullish. Gold created a new all-time high. So we expected to see that possibility that gold will pull back into this weekly bullish fair value gap. And then last week we saw how this candle closed And then I told us that price seems to be respecting the weekly bullish fair value gap, and we may see bullish perspective. But then I pointed out also, if price then gives us a bearish continuation, then we may look to see this reaction to sponsor the bearishness. But what we can see is that gold gave us bullish last week, but then we can see that volume closed bearish, because we can see we have this long week here in the weekly time frame. So we had bullish momentum, but then sellers came in and pushed price lower. So with this delivery, we may see price trade lower in gold, and the next drawn liquidity is this weekly low, and then we have a bullish fair value gap resting here. But then we must keep in mind that gold is bullish. So let's check the daily time frame. So what we can see in the daily time frame is this: gold traded bullish to the upside. You can see the full mitigation of that weekly fair value gap. Here in the daily, we have a fair value gap also. Now, gold finally broke out of the opposing fair value gap we looked at here 2 weeks ago. And then gold now traded to the bearish block we looked at, where I told us if gold goes bullish, want to go bullish to this and then look for bearish possibility. Though gold have not mitigated the volume, which is the open price of this bullish candle. Anyway, there's a mitigation of the week anyway. So we can see a rejection to the downside, sweep of the previous daily candle, rejection to the downside. Friday gave us the bearish continuation. So if we're going to continue bearish to the downside, then we may see how gold may trade and give us a pullback. If from this level it gives us a bearish model, then we trade bearish to the downside. But you have to understand that gold is bullish, and so far now gold is reacting from this bullish fair value gap. So it means that if the bullishness continues, we see strong bullishness, then we may just have to stick to the bullish possibility to the upside. This is what I have to point out to us. But then I'll be expecting or looking in the direction of the bearish possibility. But then I'll be very flexible to look at what aligns then to the main buyers. But then we may see the possibility of lower price in gold. So that is why we may have to wait to see how Monday delivers. Let's check the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, to the possible bearish perspective, this is what I'll be looking for to see. We know gold reacting from a bullish fair value gap from the daily. And the 4-hour, you can also see a bullish fair value gap give this rejection. But then gold traded into a sponsorship block we're looking at. So from the 4-hour, here is the buy movement before the sell movement. Here's the last sell candle. So it means this was mitigated. As you can see from the screen, this was mitigated by the movement we're seeing here thus far, by this return. It mitigated this level and a fair value gap here, and then gold fell to the downside. So we can see we have this bearish displacement. So for the bearish possibility, keep an eye here and see what happens here. If gold gives you a reason to be bearish from this, then the bearish then to the downside. But if gold violates that, then we'll have to look at the bullish perspective. By violating that, I mean then if we see that this possibly continues with really strong volume, then we have to stick to the perspective that gold wants to trade higher. But then this is a reference point that would help determine whatsoever we're looking forward to see, this fair value gap here. And in extension is the buy movement before the sell movement to the downside. If we do not see that price is really facing resistance from that, then we may begin to look at the possibility that gold may just trade higher. So this is what I have to show us for the coming week, guys. Cheers and God bless you all.